the signal that wasn't meant for them. The night sky above Earth was calm, but far beyond the reach of human eyes, something unusual happened. In the cold emptiness of space, a signal was released. It was sharp, coded, and filled with panic. The message was never meant for humans. It was a desperate cry, sent across the stars by an alien race begging for help. But by mistake, or perhaps by fate, the message reached Earth. Inside a deep space listening post in Alaska, two tired technicians were drinking coffee when the alarm blared. The computer had caught something strange, an encrypted burst, unlike anything they had seen before. Another glitch, one of them muttered. But as the data flowed onto the screen, their faces changed. This wasn't noise, this was language. The technicians alerted the main research team. Soon, scientists, linguists, and cryptographers were called in. At first, no one understood it. The code was alien, layered with complex mathematics. But humans had patience, and humans had curiosity. They started to decode little by little. What they discovered shook them. The message spoke of war, of an enemy that consumed entire systems. It described fleets vanishing in silence, planets turned to ash, and empires kneeling before a force they could not stop. And then there was the plea. To the Council, send aid, or all will fall. The scientists stared in silence. The message wasn't for Earth. It wasn't even for their species. But they had heard it. Word traveled quickly. The military got involved. Politicians argued. Some said, "Ignore it. This is not our war." Others whispered, "If they can destroy great empires, then Earth is in danger too." Meanwhile, far away in the galactic core, the true recipients of the message, the mighty alien council, had no idea that humans had heard their secret. To them, Earth was a backwater, a young species barely walking among the stars. They would laugh at the thought of humans getting involved, but humans were already working. The first crack teams of analysts connected the dots, the alien names, the coordinates, the star maps. They all pointed to a disaster on the edge of known space. Entire sectors were being swallowed by something relentless. Captain Elias Grant, commander of a small exploration fleet, stood in the war room staring at the decoded message. His jaw tightened. "They're not asking us," he said, "but they need us." His second-in-command frowned. "Sir, we don't even know them. Why risk human lives?" Grant's eyes burned with quiet resolve. "Because if we wait until they reach us, it'll be too late. Sometimes, you don't wait for an invitation, you act." Back on Earth, news of the discovery never reached the public. Everything was locked down under the highest classification. But in the shadows, preparations began. Human ships were old compared to alien armadas, yet humans had a habit of fighting with everything they had. For nights, engineers worked without rest. Soldiers sharpened their resolve. Pilots whispered about the danger, but none turned away. They had read the message too. They knew entire civilizations were collapsing, and in quiet moments, many asked themselves the same question. If not us, then who? The first fleet left under silence. No broadcast, no announcement, only a dark jump into the stars carrying humanity's stubborn hope. The commanders knew the galaxy didn't expect them to fight. The galaxy didn't even expect them to survive. But humans were strange that way. When others gave up, humans pressed forward. When others begged for mercy, humans clenched their fists. The message had not been for them, yet it was humans who answered. As the fleet disappeared into the void, Elias Grant whispered to himself, "Let them laugh. We'll show them what it means when humans hear a cry for help." Far away in the alien council's great chamber, the message was replayed to frightened leaders. None of them spoke of humans. None even imagined that Earth had intercepted it. They debated surrender, argued about hiding, and wondered which world would fall next. But in the silence of deep space, steel hulls carried human courage toward the unknown, and destiny shifted with every jump. The signal had never been for them, but perhaps it was always meant to be heard by humanity. The Council's secret in the heart of the galaxy, The Grand Council of Species gathered inside a massive chamber of silver and crystal. Thousands of alien voices rose in panic as the signal replayed again and again. Every representative knew what it meant. The enemy had moved closer. Another sector had fallen. Some spoke of sending fleets. Others whispered of surrender. But none of them mentioned Earth. To them, humans were too small, too weak, too new to be part of this galaxy-spanning war. Yet as the council bickered, Earth had already heard the message, and Earth had already begun to move. Back in the listening post, Dr. Mara Lee, one of the lead cryptographers, stared at her decoded transcripts. She couldn't sleep. Her team had unlocked more of the message, and what they found was terrifying. It wasn't just a distress call. It carried classified, council coordinates, tactical codes, even weaknesses of the enemy. It was never meant for outside eyes. Her colleague whispered, "Mara, do you realize what this means? We know secrets we were never supposed to know." She nodded slowly. "If the council finds out, they'll see us as thieves. But if we ignore this, we're as good as dead." On the council floor far away, Supreme Speaker Thalvra slammed his clawed hand on the table. His scaled face twisted in fear. "They are moving too fast. Systems are falling in weeks, not months. If the swarm reaches our colonies, there will be nothing left." An insectoid delegate clicked angrily. "Then we must seal the truth. If panic spreads, our people will collapse before the enemy arrives." And so the council made its choice. They would keep the danger hidden. They would fight alone, or fall alone. But they would not ask the humans. They wouldn't even admit humans existed to the wider galactic stage. But secrets have a way of slipping. And humanity was never one to stay quiet. Far across the void, Captain Elias Grant's fleet approached the edge of a silent star system. The fleet wasn't large, just 6 cruisers, 4 destroyers, and 1 old dreadnought. Against the enemy, it was nothing. Against fear, it was everything. On the bridge, his officers argued. "Sir, this isn't our war," said Commander Ruiz. "We're already stretching resources. Earth's colonies need protection. Why should we bleed for aliens who don't even know we exist?" Grant's voice was calm but sharp. "Because they're alive. Because they're fighting something that won't stop at their borders. And because, Commander, one day it will come for us. When that day comes, do you want us to face it alone?" Silence filled the bridge. No one dared answer. Meanwhile, on the council's side, whispers of humanity began to surface. A minor aide, a bird-like species named Kalra, brought secret reports to her superior. "The humans intercepted the signal," she said nervously. "They're already moving ships." Her superior froze. "Impossible. They don't have the technology." "They shouldn't," Kalra admitted. "And yet, they do. If they get involved, the council's secrecy will be exposed." For a moment, the alien official hesitated. Then his eyes narrowed. Then humans must not survive the encounter. And so plans were made in silence. If humans entered the war, they would be treated not as allies, but as intruders. Back with the fleet, Mara Lee had joined Captain Grant. She stood before him in the dim light of the tactical room. "I think the council knew this would happen," she said softly. "The message wasn't an accident, it was a mistake. But maybe a mistake they were hoping wouldn't be noticed. They wanted help, yes, but not from us." Grant studied the decoded star charts. "They may not want us," he replied, "but the galaxy doesn't get to decide for us anymore. We're here now, and we don't back down." The first encounter came quickly. As the fleet crossed the system's outer rim, sensors screamed. Dozens of faint signals emerged from the dark. At first they thought it was debris, maybe old satellites, but then the shapes moved. Metallic, shifting, hungry. The swarm had arrived. Every human ship powered weapons. Red lights bathed the bridges. Pilots locked into position. The dreadnought, iron resolve, groaned as its engines flared to full power. "Sir," Ruiz said quietly, "the swarm numbers, they're far more than we expected." Grant leaned forward. His voice carried through the intercom to every ship. Remember this. The Council thinks we're weak. The enemy thinks we're prey. But today, we show them what it means to be human. Hold the line. The swarm descended. Countless alien eyes across the galaxy would soon watch in disbelief. The tide message had not been for Earth. But Earth had answered anyway. And the secret the Council tried to hide was about to burn across the stars. First human fleet moves. The void stretched endlessly, silent and cold as the small human fleet crept forward. Their engines glowed faintly, almost invisible against the darkness. 6 cruisers, 4 destroyers, and the old dreadnought Iron Resolve moved in tight formation. Against the swarm, they were nothing more than sparks in a storm, yet every soul aboard carried a fire that no calculation could measure. On the bridge of Iron Resolve, Captain Elias Grant studied the holographic display. Faint red dots flickered at the edge of the map. Enemy movement. His officers spoke in hushed tones, afraid that even their words might awaken the shadows around them. "The swarm has noticed us," Commander Ruiz said, his voice tight. "They're spreading like a net trying to surround us." Grant didn't look up. That's what predators do. They think we're prey. Then his gaze hardened. "Let's prove them wrong." The swarm approached slowly at first, hundreds of sleek metallic forms drifting with unnatural silence. Their movements were alien, more like a living ocean than machines. And then, as one, they accelerated. The first wave struck. Dozens of swarm ships dived toward the fleet, energy beams cutting through the black. Human destroyers fired back, launching volleys of railgun rounds and missile swarms. The silence of space filled with flashes of light, bursts of plasma, and the thunder of impacts felt only through steel hulls. "Direct hit on Vanguard. Shields dropping," a voice cried. Grant's jaw tightened. "Keep the formation. Don't scatter. They want us in chaos. Hold together." The dreadnought's cannons roared, hurling tungsten slugs at near-light speed. Each shot tore through swarm ships, breaking them apart into burning fragments. The aliens watching from their hidden relays blinked in disbelief. Humans fought differently. They didn't hide behind shields or retreat at the first loss. They pressed forward, bleeding but unyielding. Inside the council chambers, live feeds reached the delegates. Shock spread like fire. "Humans," one delegate hissed. "Impossible. They should not even be here." "Look at them," whispered another. "They fight like they've been waiting for this all their lives." Back at the battle, the swarm shifted tactics. Instead of frontal attacks, they broke apart into hundreds of smaller drones, swarming the human ships like angry insects. The destroyer Horizon was the first to fall. Drones pierced its hull, tearing through decks, cutting oxygen lines. The ship lit up in one final blaze before breaking apart. Mara Lee gripped her console inside Iron Resolve. "They're learning, Captain. Every move we make, they adapt." Grant's eyes narrowed. "So do we. Redirect power. Bait them toward the asteroid field." The fleet retreated in calculated steps, pretending to falter. The swarm surged forward, eager to crush them. But humans had laid a trap. As they neared the asteroid field, hidden mines activated. Explosions lit up the void, tearing through dozens of drones. The swarm reeled, momentarily blinded. "Now!" Grant roared. The fleet unleashed everything. Railguns, missiles, plasma torpedoes. The black emptiness turned into a storm of fire. Dozens more swarm ships shattered. For a heartbeat, humanity stood tall. But victory was never easy. The swarm shifted again, pulling back only to circle around. This time, they went for the dreadnought. Hundreds of drones slammed against its armor, clawing and cutting. Metal screamed as the old warship groaned. "Breaches on Deck 12. Fire spreading," shouted an officer. Grant stood firm, hands gripping the console. "Seal the decks. Vent the fires. We don't break. Not today." Inside, crew members sacrificed themselves, locking bulkheads to stop the flames. Others dragged wounded comrades to safety. Blood stained the steel floors, but no one surrendered. And then, something unexpected happened. One of the swarms, Larger ships broke formation and began to broadcast. Not words, not sounds, but images. Strange, flickering visions filled human screens. Worlds burning, fleets falling, cities erased. It was a message, one of dominance. Ruiz swallowed hard. They're showing us what happens to those who resist. Grant's reply was ice. Then let's show them what happens when humans fight back. The dreadnought's main cannon, silent until now, powered up. The energy buildup shook the ship. Lights dimmed. Crew braced for the recoil. Then, with a thunderous blast, the cannon fired. A beam of white light tore across the void, ripping through the enemy's command ship. The explosion was so bright, even the council chambers light years away gasped as the feed flared white. When the light faded, silence followed. The swarm pulled back. For the first time in countless battles, they hesitated. On the bridge, Ruiz whispered, "They've never seen prey bite back?" Grant's face was stone. "That's because we're not prey. We're human." Across the galaxy, whispers spread. The Council had tried to keep Earth hidden, but now, every watching species knew the truth. Humans had entered the war, and the galaxy would never be the same. The enemy revealed. The silence after the battle was heavy, almost unnatural. Human ships floated scarred and battered, their hulls blackened from plasma burns. Fires still flickered behind sealed bulkheads, and the medical bays overflowed with wounded. Yet despite the cost, humanity had done the impossible. They had forced the swarm to retreat, if only for a moment. On the bridge of Iron Resolve, Captain Elias Grant stood motionless as reports came in. Horizon lost, 86 dead on Vanguard, drones still crawling on our hull. The numbers were grim, but Grant's eyes never left the fading red marks on the holographic map. The swarm wasn't gone. It was regrouping, watching, learning. And then came the shift. Without warning, the swarm's remaining ships pulled back farther than expected, beyond weapons range. From their scattered formations, something larger began to emerge, a shape, so vast it eclipsed the starlight. It wasn't one ship, it wasn't even a fleet, it was a hive. The massive construct unfolded like a living creature, its surface shifting as if it were made of flowing metal. Tendrils stretched outward, releasing fresh waves of drones. A low vibration rattled through human sensors, as though the structure itself was humming with a sinister will. Mara Lee gripped her console. Her voice trembled. "It's not a fleet. It's a living machine, a colony. The swarm doesn't build ships. They are the ships." The crew stared in silence as the hive revealed itself fully. It wasn't designed for battle in the way humans understood it. It was designed to consume, to feed. Grant finally spoke. "So that's the real enemy." His voice was low, but every word carried steel. "We're not facing ships. We're facing a species." Back in the Grand Council chamber, the live relay shook the delegates. They had seen the swarm's work before, but to witness it against humans, their supposed backwater cousins, was different. "This is madness," hissed one elder. "The humans should never have been here. Now the swarm will notice them." A reptilian warlord bared his fangs. "Let them notice. The humans bleed like any other. They will be erased, and the swarm will pass over us instead." But others weren't so sure. The feeds showed humans still standing, humans still firing, and more importantly, humans not breaking under the terror of the hive's appearance. One quiet delegate, small and insect-like, whispered, "They don't run." Even after seeing that. Why? The question spread uneasily. Meanwhile, inside Iron Resolve, the swarm's hive pulsed brighter. And then, like a voice carried across the stars, the humans began to hear something. Not words, but a vibration, a pressure in their skulls, a psychic signal, raw and alien. Crew members groaned, clutching their heads. Some screamed. Images flickered in their minds. Worlds stripped bare, cities pulled apart, oceans boiled away. 1,000 voices cried out, but none were human. It was the collective memory of extinction. Mara gasped. They're showing us. Their victories. They're telling us resistance is useless. Grant steadied himself against the console. His vision blurred, but his will held. They think fear will break us. He forced his eyes open, glaring at the hive. But fear is where humans begin. The dreadnought system shuddered, but Grant gave the order. Lock weapons, target the hive's tendrils, cut their reach. Missiles and railgun slugs tore into the darkness, striking the hive's glowing limbs. Explosions rippled across its surface, but instead of breaking, the metal flowed back together, sealing the wounds. The hive wasn't just alive, it was healing. The crew fell into despair. Sir, we can't kill it. Nothing we do matters. Grant's voice cut through the fear like a blade. Every giant bleeds, we just haven't found where yet. On the council floor, debates turned into shouting. Some species demanded immediate surrender. Hide our colonies. Pay tribute. We cannot defeat the swarm. Others looked at the human feed and said nothing, but their silence was louder than fear. For the first time, the galaxy watched humans stand against the face of annihilation. The hive responded with fury. Thousands of drones poured out, forming a wall of metal and fire. Human ships shook under the renewed assault. The cruiser Stalwart was torn apart, bodies scattering into the void. The destroyer Falcon rammed itself into a cluster of drones, detonating its core in one last desperate strike. Still, the fleet held. Inside the medical bay, wounded crew whispered prayers. Some wept. Others clenched fists and swore they would never bow. Mara sat among them, whispering to herself, if this is the enemy, then maybe humanity was born for this moment. On the bridge, Grant knew retreat was inevitable. The fleet was dying. But he also knew something else. The galaxy now understood the truth. The swarm wasn't an enemy that could be bargained with. It wasn't a plague that could be contained. It was a predator that only understood resistance. As the fleet limped away, the hive pulsed brighter, almost mocking. Yet it had not destroyed them. It had not broken them. And that was something new. In the council chamber, silence fell at last. Every delegate had seen the swarm's true form. Every delegate had seen humans survive it. And though no one spoke it aloud, a thought spread, like wildfire. Perhaps the message was always meant for them, after all. When the trap snapped shut, the swarm's hive loomed behind them, its tendrils glowing faintly in the dark like veins of fire through black metal. Human ships drifted forward, bruised and broken, giving the illusion of retreat. The galaxy, watching, through hidden relays and council feeds, believed what they saw. The humans were finished. But Captain Elias Grant wasn't retreating. He was luring. On the bridge of Iron Resolve, the lights flickered as damaged reactors groaned under strain. Sparks rained from torn panels. Medics ran through the halls carrying wounded crew. And yet, in the center of the chaos, Grant stood tall. His eyes burned with a plan no one else dared imagine. Commander Ruiz leaned close, whispering sharply, "Sir, we're down to 30% capacity. If the swarm keeps pressing, we'll be wiped out." Grant's reply was calm, steady. "That's exactly what I want them to believe." The fleet drifted toward a nearby star system, a dead place filled with rocky asteroids and the frozen remains of an old mining colony. Broken satellites orbited lifeless moons. To the swarm, it was nothing. To humans, it was bait. "Arm the sleepers," Grant ordered. Hidden among the asteroid belt were charges, warheads and mines left behind by an old Terran expedition decades ago. Humanity had a habit of leaving scars wherever they went, and tonight those scars would become weapons. Engineers had worked tirelessly to reactivate the old systems as the fleet limped toward the battlefield. Now the trap was ready. As expected, the swarm followed. Thousands of drones swirled like a tide, chasing the retreating humans into the debris field. To them, victory was already certain. They closed in, surrounding the battered fleet. "Contact in 1 minute," Ruiz reported, sweat dripping down his temple. Grant's voice carried across the ship-wide comm. "All hands, brace for impact. They think we're running. They think we're weak. Let them. But when this trap snaps shut, they'll learn what it means to corner a human. The swarm struck. Drones surged forward, slamming against cruisers and destroyers. Energy beams cut through hulls. One human ship, Defiance, cracked apart under the pressure. Screams echoed as it broke into flaming fragments. The hive pulsed from the distance, watching its prey squirm. It extended its tendrils further into the asteroid field, drawing more energy into the drones. Grant's eyes narrowed. Now! A coded signal burst out. Hidden mines across the asteroid belt lit up like stars being born. Massive explosions tore through the darkness, shattering drones in the thousands. The swarm's neat formation crumbled into chaos as asteroids broke apart, spinning into enemy lines. On the council feeds, aliens gasped. They had never seen such a strategy. Sacrifice bait, and then sudden overwhelming destruction. Impossible, hissed one delegate. They turned a graveyard into a weapon. That's human improvisation, whispered another. Inside Iron Resolve, the crew erupted in cheers as enemy ships burned. But Grant didn't smile. His gaze was locked on the hive, still looming beyond the destruction. Focus fire on the tendrils, he ordered. Cut off their command flow. Railguns and missiles ripped through the void. Dozens of swarm limbs snapped, burning into fragments. For the first time, the hive recoiled. It was wounded, but victory came with a price. The swarm retaliated with fury. Drones poured through gaps, targeting the already damaged destroyer Artemis. Its captain made a final decision. This is Artemis. Engines overloaded. For Earth, the ship ignited, detonating in a blinding flash that consumed half a swarm cluster. Silence followed, broken only by ragged breathing on the human channels. Another sacrifice. Another scar. Mara Lee, still at her console, whispered to herself, "They'll never understand us. Why we do this. Why we fight even when we're breaking." Grant heard her. He didn't turn, but his words were clear. "That's exactly why we'll win, because we don't know how to stop." Back in the council chamber, panic spread among the delegates. Some shouted that the humans had brought doom upon them all. Others, quieter but sharper, leaned forward with hungry eyes. "If a handful of human ships can do this," one murmured, "what happens when their full fleets rise?" The thought hung in the air like a blade. In space, the battle dragged on. Human ships were bleeding, but the swarm was staggering. The hive retreated slightly, pulling its tendrils back, almost uncertain. That hesitation rippled through every alien watching. It was something the swarm had never done before. Grant saw it too. His lips pressed into a grim line. They've tasted something new tonight. Fear. The trap had snapped shut. The humans had bled for every inch of it, but the galaxy had witnessed the unthinkable. The swarm, for the first time, pulled back as the humans drifted among wreckage, battered but alive. One truth echoed across the stars. The message may not have been for them, but humanity had answered, and the galaxy would never forget the sound. The galaxy watches in shock. The wreckage of the battlefield drifted like a graveyard in silence. Broken swarm drones spun endlessly, colliding with shattered asteroids. Human ships floated among them, scarred, scorched, and bleeding, but alive. The trap had worked. The swarm had pulled back. On Iron Resolve, Captain Elias Grant stood in the half-dark of the bridge. His crew worked with quiet urgency, sealing ruptures, tending to the wounded, and rerouting power to failing systems. Every face carried exhaustion, but also something deeper, pride. They had faced the impossible and endured. But far away, across the galaxy, their survival sparked chaos. In the vast chambers of the Galactic Council, delegates shouted over one another. Holograms of the human fleet's battle replayed on the central dais, every detail dissected. The Council had tried to hide the message. They had tried to keep humanity ignorant. But now every race with access to the relays had seen what Earth had done. "They baited the swarm," cried one reptilian representative. His scaled hands trembled with disbelief. No one survives once the hive descends. Yet these primitives fought them into retreat. They are reckless, hissed an insectoid delegate. They bleed themselves dry for scraps of victory. That is not strength, it is suicide. But others saw differently. They endured what we could not, whispered a slender, crystalline being, its body glowing faintly. When we fled, they held. When we begged for mercy, they fought. The chamber quieted. For centuries, the swarm had been the one enemy that united the galaxy, not through courage, but through fear. And now, a young species had stood where giants had fallen. Back on Earth, word of the battle was carefully kept hidden from the public. Families believed their sons and daughters were still on routine patrols. Politicians debated whether to admit what had happened. But within the classified war rooms, the truth burned like fire. Humanity was no longer an observer. They were a participant. In the council chamber, Supreme Speaker Thalvros rose, his scales catching the light. His voice carried above the murmurs. Do not mistake their survival for dominance. They are outmatched, outnumbered, and outgunned. If we put our hope in humans, we will doom us all. Murmurs of agreement followed, but another voice cut through. The crowd. It was Kalra, the bird-like aide who had been dismissed before. Her feathers ruffled with nervous courage, but her words were steady. And yet, Speaker, they did not die. You speak of doom. But what of possibility? If humans can wound the swarm with so little, what might they achieve with more? Silence spread again. The thought was dangerous. The thought was hope. Meanwhile, on iron resolve, Mara-Lee sat against a bulkhead in the dim light of the medical bay. Around her, the wounded groaned, doctors stitched flesh, and alarms still blinked faintly. She clutched a small datapad, replaying fragments of the decoded message. This was never for us, she whispered half to herself. But maybe it always needed us. Grant entered quietly, his uniform stained with smoke and blood. He looked at his crew, their bodies broken but their spirits unbroken. He looked at the stars beyond the viewport where the swarm had pulled back to regroup. They'll be back, Ruiz muttered, approaching him. His voice was hoarse. Next time, we won't have mines to hide behind. Grant nodded slowly. Then, next time we'll make something else. That's what humans do. We adapt. We endure. In the council, the debate reached its peak. Some demanded humanity be silenced before they grew into a threat. Others demanded the humans be embraced before. The swarm returned. Fear clashed with hope, distrust with admiration. And yet, beneath the shouting, one truth gnawed at them all. The swarm had hesitated. For centuries, no species had made the swarm hesitate. Civilizations had crumbled like sand before a tide. Empires had burned. But humans, those uninvited, unwanted outliers, had forced the predators to step back. The council could not ignore it. Neither could the galaxy. Messages spread through shadow networks. Whispers passed in back alleys and hidden ports. Traders told stories of human ships fighting like wolves, bleeding but refusing to fall. Refugees from fallen colonies clung to rumors that a new power had risen, one that didn't bow before the swarm. On Iron Resolve, as the fleet limped through the void, the crew gathered in silence. Their screens lit up with intercepted transmissions, alien, broadcasts filled with disbelief, awe, even hope. One young ensign looked up, eyes wide. Sir, they're talking about us, the whole galaxy. They're watching us. Grant stood at the center, shoulders heavy but spirit unbroken. He thought of the message. He thought of the desperate plea that had never been meant for human ears. And then he spoke, quietly but firmly. Good. Let them watch. Let them see. Because if the galaxy wants saving, they'll have to learn one truth. His eyes locked on the stars ahead. Humans don't quit. Across the galaxy, those words were not yet heard, but soon they would echo louder than the swarm's fear. The galaxy had witnessed humanity's defiance, and nothing would ever be the same again. The message fulfilled, the swarm returned, not as scattered drones or fractured wings of attack, but as a storm. From the void poured tens of thousands of ships, each glinting with the cold shine of living metal. Their hive pulsed at the center, tendrils stretching like claws into the stars. This time there would be no hesitation, no testing. They came to a race. On iron resolve, Captain Elias Grant stood before his weary crew. They were battered, exhausted, and outnumbered beyond measure. And yet, not a single one looked away. "They think we're finished," he said, voice steady, as iron. "They think this is the end of Earth, the end of humanity, but they don't understand us. They never will, because when others see the end, humans see the fight." His words spread through every ship in the fleet. Men and women, bruised and broken, clenched their fists and prepared for what might be their last stand. Across the galaxy, millions watched the live feeds. Council delegates leaned forward, eyes wide with fear and fascination. Smugglers, refugees, and soldiers from fallen colonies whispered prayers to gods they no longer believed in. The humans were alone, but they carried something the galaxy had forgotten: defiance. The swarm descended. The first impact rattled the fleet. Drones slammed into destroyers, energy beams carved through cruisers, and flames erupted from ruptured hulls. Human guns fired back with desperate fury, railguns spitting slugs, missiles streaking into the void. Ships cracked and bled, but still they held. Then the hive itself turned its gaze. A pulse rippled outward, a wave of psychic terror crashing into the human minds. Screams filled the comms. Images of destruction, cities crumbling, oceans boiling, children turned to ash, burned behind every eye. Mara Lee clutched her head, blood dripping from her nose. "They want us to break," she gasped. Grant's voice cut through the storm. "They're showing us death. Fine, show them humanity's answer." He gave the order. From within the fleet, hidden systems came online. Weeks earlier, engineers had scavenged alien wreckage, reprogramming swarm drones captured in battle. Now, those drones activated. Instead of joining the hive, they turned on it, slamming into their former kin with savage fury. The council chamber erupted in gasps. They turned the swarm's own against it. Explosions ripped across the battlefield as corrupted drones tore through the hive's outer layers. For the first time, the massive construct shuddered. But the price was heavy. One by one, human ships fell. Vanguard was torn in two, its engines exploding in a silent scream of fire. Stalwart 2 rammed directly into a swarm carrier, both vanishing in a burst of light. The fleet was dying, but every death carved deeper wounds into the enemy. On the bridge of Iron Resolve, alarms wailed. "Shields failing. Hull breaches on. Decks 7 through 12. Grant steadied himself. "Keep firing. Every second we live is another second they bleed." The hive pulsed again, angrier now. It released a colossal beam of energy, cutting through the void like a blade of light. It struck Iron Resolve directly, tearing through its armor, shaking the ship to its core. Crew were thrown from their posts. Fires raged, but still, the ship lived. Mara staggered to her console, her voice hoarse. "Captain, I've found something. A weakness." Grant turned, blood streaking his brow. "Where?" She pointed at the hive's core. "The tendrils. They all link there. If we overload their connections, the whole structure collapses. But we'd have to get inside." The room fell silent. Everyone knew what that meant. Grant didn't hesitate. "Then we get inside." The fleet shifted, what remained of it forming a wedge. Destroyers and cruisers gave their last volleys, drawing the swarm away. Iron Resolve, burning and broken, plunged straight toward the hive. Drones swarmed around them, slamming against the hull, tearing through the steel. Crew fought them hand to hand in the corridors, blades and rifles clashing with metal claws. Blood ran, but no one turned back. The dreadnought rammed through the outer shell. Metal screamed, fire erupted. Inside the hive, the ship tore a path straight to the core. Grant's voice echoed through the comm. "All hands, this is it. For Earth. For the galaxy." The reactor overloaded. Iron Resolve became a star. The explosion ripped through the hives, heart tearing its tendrils apart in a chain reaction. The massive construct split open, collapsing under its own weight. The swarm shrieked in silent agony, their unity shattered. Across the void, drones fell lifeless, their bodies drifting. Like ash in the wind, the battlefield went silent. The humans were gone, but so was the hive. In the council chamber, silence reigned. For once, no delegate spoke. No one dared. They had seen the impossible. Humanity had stood alone against the swarm, and humanity had won. At last, one delegate whispered, almost reverently, "The message was never meant for them, and yet they were the only ones who answered." Another replied, "Perhaps the galaxy doesn't choose its saviors. Perhaps saviors choose themselves." And so the legend of Earth spread like wildfire. A young, reckless species had stared into the abyss and refused to bow. They had paid in blood, but they had saved the galaxy. The message had not been for humans, but in the end it was humanity that fulfilled it. And across the stars, in every hidden corner of the galaxy, one truth echoed louder than fear. Humans don't quit.